Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ilias Grompas, and on behalf of the Secretariat of the European Parliament Intergroup on Climate Change, Biodiversity and Sustainable Development, I'm delighted to welcome you all with us today at our event addressing honey labeling. Before we kick off with today's discussion, I would like to take the opportunity to thank MEP Mr. Juozas Olekas for hosting this event under the umbrella of the European Parliament Intergroup. Mr. Olekas is a member of the European Parliament for the group of S&D, the Progressive Alliance for Socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament, and inter alia, a member of Agri Committee, the one on Agriculture and Rural Development. But of course, under the umbrella of the Intergroup, Mr. Olekas is co-chair of the Sustainable Agriculture, Food Systems and Apiculture Working Group. So just prior to passing the floor to hosting MEP for his opening remarks, I would like to invite participants to also send us your questions during the event. For that, you can use the Q&As box of the platform. You can also choose the all panelists option, but please, within your question, within your message, please make sure to note the speaker to whom your question would be best addressed, so that on behalf of the Secretariat of the Intergroup, we can facilitate a fruitful discussion to follow. So once again, thank you very much for being with us today. And without further ado, Mr. Olekas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ilias, for introduction. And dear colleagues, or as we in Lithuania call our fellow beekeepers, dear friends, thank you for coming together today to discuss the issue of honey labeling, an issue that is important to all of us, consumers, beekeepers, and the wider society. We are now forming the European Green Deal, and pollinators are a very important part of it. Bees are an essential part of the biodiversity. They pollinate more than 80% of crops and wild plants in Europe, provide honey and other beekeeping products, and bring at least 22 billion euro a year to European agriculture. Unfortunately, now the beekeeping sector is facing great challenges, as European beekeepers are collecting the worst harvest in the decade. Yet, despite low levels of production, honey prices have not rising because of imports. Current EU directives require all honey sold in the EU to have its origin written on the label. However, if the product is a mix of honey from various sources, the label only has to indicate if the mix comes from the EU, from non-EU countries, or both. You do not have to specifying the countries or even the proportion of the blend. This kind of labeling can be used to deceive consumers who believe that they are buying EU product when the proportion of the honey from the EU may be in fact very small. According to current law, there is also no obligation to specify the exact country from which the product originates. EU citizens should receive the same quality of information regardless of the price of the product, and also producers should be able to emphasize the high standards of the honey they collect. So we in the European Parliament Intergroup of Climate Change, Biodiversity and Sustainable Development organized this event in order to discuss the challenges and opportunities. I am a beekeeper myself, so I know how important this issue is. We have representatives of European Commission, as I said, Slovenian presidency, and producers and consumers organization with us today. I would like to start with giving the floor to the Commission representative, Brigitte Sonnen. She is the head of the unit of animal product of the Directorate General for Agriculture and Rural Development of the European Commission. Among her responsibilities, she is focusing on the monitoring market developments, including market measures for animal products and the CAP reform. Mrs. Masson, you have the floor.
Many thanks, Mr. Olekas. Many thanks for your opening words and for the introduction. It is a true pleasure to be your invitee today, and you are fully right. This is an important topic that requires discussion, and you have provided for an interesting panel to discuss all aspects of the issue. So thanks for the invitation. I will try to cover the ground, let's say, in the 10 minutes that were allocated for my intervention, trying to show the various aspects of the topic of discussion for today. And thanks to Regine, who will be passing through the slides. So Regine, let's go to the next slide, please. And let's start with the Farm to Fork strategy. Mr. Olekas was reminding us that we are in the time of the Green Deal. Yes, indeed. And in the Farm to Fork strategy, you have as an annex an action plan where you can see very precisely what actions the Commission is planning to put in place this Farm to Fork strategy. You could have thought that Action 21 would be the one where we could discuss honey origin labeling, because this action is about indeed origin labeling for certain products. And there a proposal by the Commission is foreseen for the end of 2022. But in fact, it will not be under that Action 21 that we will discuss honey origin labeling. It will be under Action 18, which is the review of marketing standards. Both those actions are seen with a sustainability angle. And the honey directive is, as you know, separate from the so-called FIC regulation, the Food Information to Consumers regulation, where you have normally all provisions about origin labeling. But in this case, in the case of honey, we have a separate directive, and that's why we are dealing with it under the review of marketing standards. What has happened already? We have already had a public consultation, an open public consultation on the subject, and there were 2 questions on honey origin labeling in the overall open public consultation on marketing standards. We received some 300 responses, and among those responses, 45 concerned honey. With the next slide, we have again in mind what Mr. Olekas also mentioned. What is the latest EP view on the subject? We find it in the resolution of October on the Farm to Fork strategy, where under number 97, the European Parliament calls on the Commission to propose legislative changes for honey labeling rules, for better consumer information, but also to support the EU beekeeping sector by reinforcing import inspections to prevent fraud, adulterated honey, while stressing that all country of origin labeling needs to be effectively enforced. So there are many elements in just one sentence. So it's important to have them in mind for our discussion. With the following slide, we look at the other institutions. So we saw the Commission action plan, the EP resolution. Now let's look at what the Council is doing in the field. Under the German presidency, at the end of 2020, there were presidency conclusions adopted where, like the EP, the Council is also referring to Member States' call for specifying the countries of origin of honey used in honey blends. And the Council, in those presidency conclusions, called upon the Commission to start work on a legislative proposal to amend the directive accordingly. So we have a very good parallelism with the position of the EP and the position of the Council. Under the Slovenian presidency, and we all know that beekeeping is very close to the heart of Slovenia, under the Slovenian presidency, in October this year, the point was on the agenda, and many ministers expressed support for the presidency's proposal to review the rules on the labeling of honey blends. With the next slide, let's see what exactly we are confronted with today. So what does the legislation foresee today? As Mr. Olekas was reminding us, for the moment, country of origin is already compulsory for honey when honey is fully obtained in one single member state. So honey obtained in Lithuania must be labeled origin Lithuania. Where we have the debate today is about blends, as Mr. Olekas was also saying. He reminded about this blend of EU honeys, if it is Lithuania, Latvia, Estonian honey together. Blend of non-EU honeys, if it is China, Ukraine, Argentinian honey. Or blend of EU, non-EU honey, if it is both China, Ukraine, Lithuania, Latvia, for instance. But there is also, for the moment, a possibility for member states, and some have indeed taken that opportunity, to have national rules specifying that any honey packed on their territory must bear a label with the origin. So any country who believes this is the right course of action can decide, on my territory, every honey packed must clearly label this is coming from China, or this is coming from a neighboring member state. So this is possible today without changing anything in the directive, and it is done by a number of countries, as you see on that slide. There is one very important condition. It cannot prevent honey packed in other member states legally to enter the territory. With the next slide, we have a look at what is this situation in practice. So with those various rules, we are in fact giving the choice to consumers. Those consumers who want to buy French honey because they believe that this is better, they can go in the shops and they find French honey. You can find honey with a label France. Those who are not necessarily wanting to buy French honey and who maybe don't have the purchasing power to buy the highest quality of honey, have today the choice of buying in shops a blend of honey with possibly some imported content. This is also available, and they know it because it's written EU, non-EU, or non-EU if it's just Chinese honey. One thing important to keep in mind, it's not because you have a label on a product that you prevent fraud. So the prevention of fraud is the job of member states. They have to perform controls. They have to take appropriate actions when there are fraud cases or suspected fraud cases. And there is indeed at EU level a network where cross-border cooperation is organized. With the next slide, we look at, okay, what can we do? So let's look ahead. We have the three institutions with on their agenda something on honey origin labeling. So what is important to keep in mind from a Commission perspective? The Commission is the guardian of the treaty. The treaty establishes the single market. So we have to keep in mind that whatever we do must preserve the good functioning of the single market. A second important element, in particular in the Green Deal context, is that we should not confuse country of origin labeling with consumer choice for local products. Let me just take one concrete example. If you are a new citizen living in the Ardennes, in France, in that part of France, it's not by buying French honey that may come from the south of France, for instance, that you are making a purchasing choice for locally. Because it could be that by buying honey from the Belgian Ardennes, which is exactly the same regions, you would be opting for a more local choice. So we should not confuse country of origin labeling with local choices. And of course, in all our work, we will take account of what comes out of the open public consultation, and we will have an impact assessment to see whatever scenario we may have in mind would mean in economic terms, in terms of economy, social aspects, environment, climate change, etc. As I was telling you at the start, the open public consultation is finished already. So it was open the whole summer until the end of August. We are currently preparing the impact assessment, and if all goes well, the plan is to have proposals for the middle of next year. So the second quarter, or maybe more realistically, the third quarter of 2022. And if I still have 2 minutes, maybe we can look at the last slide, where just to keep in mind what are the facts and figures of the sector. So the European Union is the second producer of honey in the world after China, but before Turkey, Canada, Argentina, Iran, the US, Ukraine, etc. So we are a big producer. And within Europe, the main producing member states are basically the south and the east. So Spain, Italy, Greece, when we look at the south, maybe we can put France as well in the south. And then when we look at the east, Hungary, Poland, Romania. So these are the main EU producing member states. Nevertheless, we, with our EU production, only covers 60% of our consumption needs. So imports are necessary, and we import indeed, mainly from Ukraine. So it's our first origin, followed by China. So those are really high percentages. Afterwards, we have South America, for instance, but the percentages of honey imported from those countries is much lower than from Ukraine and China. You could say that it's a small sector. We count some 19 million beehives, and we count much less than 1 million beekeepers. So yes, it's a small sector, but it is very important, and Mr. Olekas said it at the very start. It is important for the whole agricultural sector, if only via its services as bees being pollinators. So I would keep my intervention at that, and I very much welcome the exchange of views. Many thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Masone, for your very informative presentation. And now I would like to ask Simona Vrec to present the Slovenian presidency. Mrs. Vrec is the Chancellor of Agriculture and the spokesperson for the Special Committee for Agriculture for the permanent representation of Slovenia to the European Union. Before he worked for the Slovenian permanent representation, Mrs. Vrec worked as an executive secretary for Slovenian Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Food for 15 years. Mrs. Simona, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Olekas, for this introduction. but also good morning to all the other participants, representatives of the Parliament and beekeepers, I hope. Well, I'm really happy to have been invited to this webinar on the labeling of honey, because as Slovenian presidency, we have put this amongst one of the priorities. But clearly, Slovenia is also known for its tradition in beekeeping, and beekeepers are extremely important for us. And just to remind you that one of the, let's say, internationally most visible initiative from Slovenia was to introduce the United Nations World Bee Day, which takes now place on the 20th of May since 2017. As already mentioned, and also it was reiterated by the Commission in the previous presentation, we have put the question of honey labeling as a priority, but also in a broader framework. A priority for us, it's also how to support the pollinators services of bees, but also white pollinators in terms of securing food security and the future production of food due to the services they provide. It's also important, or we are of concern, we are convinced that honey as a natural product is highly appreciated by the consumers, and this appreciation goes beyond just being a food or a nourishing product, but also it has other important characteristics. And clearly, the sector is currently facing many challenges, from economic challenges, but also climate change and other environmental challenges. And in this respect, we have quite early recognized also the need to address the question whether by providing better information to consumers, also for honey blends coming where we have a mixture of honey coming from imports and European honey, if this could not be an avenue to follow in order to, I agree with the Commission that just by labeling the origin in this respect, we cannot solve the problems of fraud and adulteration, and we cannot solve the problem of everything, but we can contribute to this, solving it. Why? Because we think that labeling is an important tool for the communication with the consumer, and we don't communicate just the bare facts, but also the characteristics, the ingredients, nutritional value, and the quality. And since we have the beekeepers in Europe have chosen this path already, and they have done a lot in the past to give this information to the consumer, including the origin, which was also mentioned by Brigitte in the previous presentation. It would be correct that this information is also provided to the consumers when we have honey blends, so that then they know where the honey comes from. And it's true that already now individual member states can decide to have a stricter regulation in this part, but we believed firmly that actually, since we have the common market, we have to have such rules implemented for the whole of EU. And as indicated, we had therefore, during our presidency, we have addressed this issue during the Pollinators Week, but also at the discussion we have held at the October Council meeting. And but this was not the first action of Slovenia. In 2020, we have discussed the common declaration backed by 16 member states addressing this issue in Council. This was, so to say, our start of the initiative. As mentioned, the Council has, in the presidency conclusions from last year on the front of label packaging, confirmed or reconfirmed the political determination of member states that we have to address this issue. And in the discussion we have had last, in the October Council meeting, we have gone a step further, because we asked the member states not just whether they would be supporting a revision of the directive, but also in what kind this should be addressed. And I can say that for me, listening to the discussion, it was clear that there is almost an unanimous support to change the directive, but there are some differentiation about whether in which direction. Some member states have opted just for indicating the countries of origin clearly. The others have added that they should be arranged in an order to clearly indicate which third country has contributed the biggest share. The others were even more ambitious and saying we have to indicate on the label in the future the country and the percentage of honey which is included in this the percentage of the share of the honey which comes from this country. Some have said that what we need to do is as well indicate or give some more indication on the authenticity of the honey. By saying this, the Council I think is now expecting what the Commission will propose. And what is also important, I think that we have available the tools to do this or to implement such a provision from the industry with low cost, because we have IT solutions which could facilitate this. We could use other like blockchains for even granting consumers additional information. So we are really looking now with all our hopes towards the Commission that the coming legislative proposal will be as ambitious as possible. By this, I would like to end my my contribution for now, and looking forward to listening to other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Suretz. And now I would like to turn towards the keepers themselves and give the floor to Mr. Stanislav Jash, who is the Vice Chair of the Kopa Kožeka Working Party on Honey and member of the Finnish Beekeepers Association. He is a fourth-generation beekeeper, and he requires practical beekeeping experience in several countries in the European Union. Currently, he runs an originally certificate professional beekeeping operation in Finland. Stanislav, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and hello to everyone. I join you from Prague. I'm currently on a European journey to meet with many beekeepers, and my journey will end up in Brussels at the end of the month. So hopefully we can perhaps even meet.
Welcome to European Parliament. Well, you always welcome.
Yeah, I would like to tell you in a few minutes. Don't have any presentation, but if you look at the EU Pollinators Week website from this September, you will find many presentations, including ours. My colleague Etienne Bruno about the market, and myself about traceability. So just in a nutshell, Kopa Kožeka is a working party on honey, and we made an action plan to deal with the catastrophic honey market situation last year, and we singled out the actions we need, but we want to ensure in the name of all beekeepers, not only professional beekeepers, that we have a sustainable sector, sustainable production of honey and other bee products in the EU also in the future. And we need to address this economic sustainability above all, because the market situation, let's be honest, has deteriorated in a way that many professional beekeepers just end up their career, or they reduce the number of beehives, and we limit our production capacity in the EU, which is not self-sufficient anyway. So we need to do something. And then when we talk about the market functioning, let's be honest also that the major problem that has been here for several years now is the presence of adulterated products on the market. And let's be honest also that these products also enter the EU from outside. This is the way why we need to address the functioning of the market, and especially prices of honey and the authenticity of the product, so that we can compete with real honey. Now, the challenges we are now currently facing, and you already mentioned it, for 2 seasons now, major honey producer countries have seen major fluctuations, reduction in honey crops. Climate change reduces the production and makes the volatility even more extreme. The cost of production increased because there are extreme events. Bees need to be fed in emergency. The stock has to be renewed because of losses. And the price of honey simply, at least in bulk, doesn't pay the cost of production. So we think that to improve this market situation, we need to help the producers to get that fair income by introducing more transparency, and empower the consumers also to find the product, the authentic product. Now, the solution has been mentioned. Since last year, it has become clear that I don't really know any beekeeping organization in Europe anymore that would not support the revision, or I would say update, of the honey directive. We like the honey directive. It's a unique text next to Codex Alimentarius. We are really happy that we have it, but it's time to update it. It's been for 20 years now here, and we have the momentum. And I'm pleased to hear that we can do it next year. Above the concrete proposals, I can tell you clearly, we have it clear in our beekeeping sector. We would like, when it comes to the origin labeling, the place of farming, to mention in these honey blends all the countries that enter into the blend, with the respective percentages in decreasing order. And we would like to have it on the front of pack labeling, provided that, and this was also stressed by Mrs. Refts, is that it is feasible, it is relatively, cost friendly, and it doesn't kill the beekeepers. So this is a technical discussion. I'm looking forward to it. We have our working group now meeting at the end of the month, and we are going into details. So you can count on our input. And what I would like to stress from the discussion, it's not yet very well understood, but we need to make sure that this better origin labeling works. In practice is controllable. We need some rules on traceability. And the honey directive currently doesn't even mention the word traceability. It is a technical discussion, but we are persuaded that the traceability must be somehow introduced into the honey supply chain, because it is an additional tool for the consumers to check, for the authorities to check, to control, and also for the beekeepers to be able to communicate to the honey buyers where the honey is produced. And to be honest, we have the digital solutions already, but what we need is maybe a guidance, a thorough technical discussion how to do it, and some mention in the legislation. Traceability is mentioned in the EU legislation, in the food law, but it's not mentioned specifically to the honey supply chain. And I think there are really important things in this field. It's voluntary for businesses, but we can make it somehow workable and mentionable in the honey directive. It's a global issue, so we would not be the first to discuss this. At the end of the day, I think empowering the consumer is the key. And I understand that there are some maybe fears within some member states and the EU Commission that by mentioning every country in the blends, we, especially from Europe, we may undermine somehow the EU market, but I don't think so. We really thought about it, and I don't think so. We have already in the beef sector, for instance, olive sector, we have quite good rules on traceability and origin, and it doesn't undermine the EU market. It just needs to be feasible, relatively cost-friendly, and I think it will be next year on the agenda. We will come up with concrete solutions. So really, when you speak about traceability and labeling, they go hand in hand. And I think it will be a wonderful tool for the authorities to control honey fraud as well.
Thank you, Stanislav. As I said, you're always welcome in the European Parliament, and it's not so far from Kopa-Kožeka office. And thank you very much for your concrete proposal to us. And now I ask Mrs. Gemma Trigueros, the food coordinator of the Organization of Consumers and Nurses, to speak on behalf of the consumers. She is also head of international lobby activities for the Euro Consumers Group on food issues and a member of the food group of the European Office on Consumer Association. Mrs. Gemma, the floor is yours, please.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for inviting me to this very interesting meeting, because really the honey is, we have detected also that is a problem, and consumers are interested in the honey and where it came from. We have done in Spain a survey very recently. We have published it in April, and we do it together with other consumer organizations of Europe. So we joined together to do the analysis. We studied 18 products, 20 products of the Spanish market. Most of them, 12, were Spanish origin, but there were some blends, also 8 products that were blends. In Spain, as some of you may know, we have a new legislation that obliges to all the producers that produce, well, not produce, they pack the honey in Spain to put the origin. So this go into force December past year. We were in that moment asking the producers about the honey to buy it. So we really go for the moment where the market was changing, and we saw that it was China was disappearing from the labels. This was quite astonishing, because in the moment where the origin has to be mentioned in the label, all the producers that have China in their products change the labeling, and we hope they change also the suppliers to not to have China in the label. So now it's very difficult to find, or even impossible to find, China between the origins of the honey, but no price change. So we have do the analysis to look for the botanic origin, and the botanic origin was compliance with what was mentioned in the labeling. The thing is that in the labeling they are not obliged to mention the percentage, and not even in the decrease order of the countries. So you find always Spain at the first in the ingredient list. But okay, in the first proposal of the Spanish government was like that, but it seems that after the European Commission consultation, this was removed from the proposal. The big problem we have found was not about the botanic origin, was about the authenticity. As the colleague before me spoke, we use 2 methods to detect the frauds. We found some problems that in both methods there were bad, but at the end we were not able to publish this in Spain because we have a Spanish regulation for the analysis to be published, and we have to do a confirmation with the official method. And with the official method, they are all okay, because you can find in AliExpress or Alibaba, in these platforms, you can find products, syrup that are not detectable by official methods. And this is announced like that. The labs show us that you can go and buy products to adulterate the honey that are not detectable. So the big problem we think we have is also about methodology. We are already involved in some national groups of ISO methods to be developed for honey authenticity. These groups are also involved in European groups because we really think that this is a very big problem now. Labs develop their own methods. They don't share the knowledge. They don't share the libraries they have about the composition, and all this knowledge has to be put together to produce really a method that is recognized by all, that is useful, and that can be considered official, for example, for the European Union. Because in the other hand, with the syrups, you don't have pollen. So you don't have pollen, you don't have origin. So all is linked together. If the honey is not honey, what about the origin? I mean, so this is the big problem that we have found. And in other countries, the situation was the same. I have just received a publication from France with the same kind of results. They have published because they don't have this legislation for the comparative testing. In France, they have published the problems for syrups and so. So this is the main issues I wanted to explain here. And okay, very interesting to review the directive, but I think it has to be very ambitious to go for origin, for adulteration, for traceability. Everything has to be covered, so the consumers can be confident on what is in the label is the truth. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mrs. Trigueros, for your very deep insights and overview on very practical situation in different countries and needs to improve the quality of standards and laboratory investigation. We also have with us Professor Norberto Garcia, the president of the Scientific Commission of Beekeeping Economy of Epimondia. Epimondia is the International Federation of Beekeepers Associations that promotes apiculture development worldwide. It cooperates with the Beekeepers Association, scientific bodies, and individuals involved in the apiculture across the globe. Please, Professor, give us your opinion.
Thank you and good afternoon, Mr. Olekas, and thank you for the invitation to participate in this meeting. I would like to share, let's see if I can find my presentation here. Yes. I hope you see my presentation properly.
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Mr. Olekas. During the last years, I've been involved chairing an international panel of experts, indeed nearly 50% are European, in the preparation and publication of the United States Pharmacopoeia's International Honey Identity Standard, which is absolutely aligned with the European Directive and with Codex Alimentarius in terms of definitions of honey and concepts, but it has updated all the testings that can deal with the new methods of adulteration that are now in the international market. I would like to bring your attention in 4 main paragraphs of the European Directive, which are more or less repeated in Codex and the USP standard. The first is the definition of honey that only allows bees to transform nectar into honey, no human intervention. There is another paragraph that only honey can be blended with honey and no other additives can be added to honey. That is paragraph 2. Paragraph 3 that I bring your attention is that no pollen or other individual constituents or ingredients of honey can be removed. And finally, regarding that if honey is labeled for the geographical origin, that cannot be blended with filtered honeys. These 4 paragraphs bring the answer of the main honey adulteration methods that are currently present in the international honey market. The dilution of syrups, as was mentioned, violates paragraph B1 and 2. Harvesting immature honey violates paragraph 1 because there is a human intervention there, and paragraph 3. This is a very important aspect because when we deal with honey fraud, we normally think of dilution with syrups, but the production of immature honey in many Asian countries is producing a product that does not meet the standard. And the problem here arrives when that honey is blended with other honeys. According to paragraph 3, all the blend cannot be labeled as honey. Then the use of resins violates paragraph 3, masking the geographic origin violates paragraph 4, and artificial feeding of bees during a nectar flow violates paragraph 1 and 2 described earlier. I have to be quick, I'm sorry. As I said, the USP has recently published in the Food Chemical Codex an international standard absolutely aligned in terms of definitions and concepts with the European resolution, but has updated all the testing according to the new methods that have been developed to cheat the consumers regarding honey. After this, we are now working in different projects, and one is the Honey Fraud Mitigation Guidance in collaboration with the FIDEM, which is the Federation of European Honey Packers and Dealers. And in parallel, the Apimondia Working Group on Honey Adulteration has been publishing and updating the Apimondia Statement on Honey Fraud. That this is a document, this is not a standard, but reveals the thoughts of the beekeeping sector of what can be done and what cannot be done in production terms in beekeeping. So these 2 documents are dynamic in the sense that are yearly revised and checked, and if needed, updates are published. So that solves the problem of very good standards that may remain valid for 20, 30 years, and the market evolves more quickly. Of course, there are further challenges. One has been already mentioned, is the update of other international honey standards, for example, the European directive. The key point here is to improve the traceability systems to prevent the fraud, because you may change the labeling, but if you cannot check thoroughly the traceability of that honey, some operators will find a way to cheat even very good labeling. That does not mean that good labeling is not needed. Of course, it is needed. The problem here is that many honeys in the international honey market that are arriving to Europe do not meet the European directive. So when blended, as said, with other honeys, maybe from Europe, the whole blend cannot be called honey at all. Of course, a correct labeling is of extreme importance. The information to consumers to have the choice, and perhaps experiences from other parts of the world could be useful to take as a base for your future improvements. While preparing this and hearing you, I would like to bring you an extra slide, and this is the last one. In a recent publication that we made with Dr. Stefan Strassinger from the University of Bayreuth in Germany, we could detect some statistical anomalies in the international honey market. For example, this represents the increment of imports in some countries. For example, see the red dots here, and how those increments in imports affect the increment of exports. according to the regression line, 85% of the increment of exports of some countries of Europe can be explained by increment of imports. In easier words, many countries are importing cheap honey to Europe and then re-export that honey as locally produced. So if good traceability systems are not in place, even changes in the labeling can be cheated. So all these things, the definitions of the European directive, the different modes of adulteration, and the lack of good traceability systems should work in parallel also with new labeling systems. Thank you very much, Mr. Olekas.
Thank you, Professor, for your very deep insights, and I think it would be very important for us for the future discussion here in the Parliament and together with the European Commission and the Council, how we can improve this labeling and in general situation with honey products here in the European market. And now I give the floor to our final speaker, Mr. Arne Henriksen, the chairman of the Danish Beekeepers Association that represents 90% of Danish beekeepers. It aims to promote beekeeping in Denmark and to represent its interests. Mr. Henriksen today represents the Nordic Baltic Bee Council, a union of Nordic and Baltic beekeeping organization, who are also very concerned with the honey issue. Mr. Henriksen, you have the floor now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation to this event. As you say, today I represent the Nordic Baltic Bee Council. The Nordic Baltic Bee Council is organization which consists of the beekeeping organizations in Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and the three Baltic countries. We had an online meeting last month where we discussed labeling and honey fraud. And I got an example of what we have met when we talk about mislabeling honey here in Denmark. As you can see in the jar on the right-hand picture, it says actually Danish produced and there's a Danish flag on it, but it's actually honey which is from South America. It's called Danish produced because it's only filled on the jars in Denmark. So it's not. We will not say it's produced in Denmark. We will say it's only developed and worked with it in Denmark. And we have had this market on a high level in Denmark, and it has been stopped now. But this is what we're up against, and we think it's because that I think it goes for all countries, that there's the consumers got a preference for local honey, for national honey. So that's why we see this kind of labeling. No one will know what the blend of easy and non-easy honey actually is. It could be honey from everywhere in the world, so it's actually saying nothing about anything. It's absolutely valuable, useless information for the consumers. As we've heard before, there's a problem not only by labeling, but also about honey fraud, which can be hard to actually detect in the situation we're in now. So we've got these two big issues. The Nordic Baltic countries agreed on sending this memorandum to the agreed on this about the labeling and traceability in the food chain. this memorandum is intended for policymakers in both in our own countries as well as in EU, and so we like to make our influence in these matters. We are very much in line with what we have heard before about labeling, the demands we want to have on the new labeling. It should be that all countries from where the honey actually has been harvested also we say that the bees in the countries where the bees have actually been flying around should be on the front label of the front of the pack label. So, and with the percentage of the honey from each country. So that's very much in line with what we have heard before. Also, it's very important that the traceability of honey bee products are secured, that there's a way of trace honey. It should be reliable, bee friendly, and we should be able to verify it. We have also heard about this. Mr. Juozas talked about a lot about it in the session. So that's the main info from Nordic Baltic Bee Council in this memorandum, and I think it's very much in line with the other speakers. So that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henriksson. This is very practical information from your side, and it's I think it's really very important to us. And now we came to the discussion part of our event, and I will ask Elias from our intergroup secretary to moderate the question and answer session. Elias, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Olekas, for providing the floor. And indeed, it's the much-awaited time for the Q&As and the panel discussion with our excellent set of speakers today. So I would like to take the opportunity to reach out to our audience and once again remind them that this is the moment to send us your questions for the session. Perhaps prior to that, I'm very happy as we noticed that there is a great momentum, of course, with regards to today's topic. At the same time, the Honey Directive is 20 years old and still the member states have the room to implement at national level. So we see that some member states oblige the exact indication of origin for honey blends. Specifically, we heard about some cases from Greece, Italy, Romania, Spain, France and Portugal. So the south and the east part of the Europe, as mentioned by the European Commission. At the same time, some other countries use the legal option that they have in the regulation to label blends of honey as mixtures of EU and non-EU accordingly. However, it's towards the great interest of consumers to know the origin of products, to make well-informed choices. So the label of food also came up very strong in the, very importantly, under Farm to Fork. Also, Ms. Sonne mentioned the proposal from the European Commission to require origin indication for certain products expected for Q4 2022, but also the fact that the European Commission is analyzing the feedback received in the public consultation for the review of marketing standards. So perhaps just to serve as a clarification for our audience, I wanted to ask Ms. Sonne, what about the possibility of reviewing the Honey Directive in relation to origin labeling of 2001, or would the relevant marketing standards review then provide the new proposals frame ahead?
Many thanks for this question. So from it's in fact a practical consideration. So let's say that intellectually we would all have expected to have honey origin labeling within the action on origin labeling. But as the legal basis is different and it is not based on the FIC regulation, then we are conducting it as part of the marketing standards review. So the only difference is that we will be a bit ahead of the other possible proposals on origin indication for other products, because the timetable is a bit shorter for marketing standards than for origin labeling. But let's say that it does not change anything to the content. So it's really a practical consideration. And what matters is, of course, that the subject is on the table and is being discussed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Son, and I would also like to take the opportunity to thank all the speakers for addressing the origin angle with regards to honey labeling. Of course, transparency and coherence are very important parameters. Perhaps I would also like to ask you, what could you further comment on the link also with traceability in the honey supply chain? This is something that Mr. Jas touched upon, also Mr. Garcia and Mr. Henriksen. Perhaps there is any win-win opportunities there. Any comment from any other speaker perhaps there?
I'm not sure whether you wanted me to react on that or whether you
Wish,
prefer to have somebody else.
It would be an open question for all panelists.
Okay, then I would leave it to the other ones then.
Well, seeing non-reaction, perhaps once again, Miss One, would you like to take the floor?
I believe that it's exactly there that we have the difficulty. So if you make a parallel with what we have for beef or for other meat, where you have indeed compulsory country of origin indication there, and this is linked to history, and it dates back to the BSE crisis, so to very hard times in Europe. We have put in place for meat a very strict, stringent, and very precise traceability system, which is based, which is really framing the way the supply chain works. And this is unique. It's only for meat that we have that in Europe. And yes, it is very tempting to say, okay, we have done it for meat, so why don't we do it for the others? And it has come out very clearly from all the inputs, all the contributions this morning. The problem is that we have, and I stand to be contradicted, and I would be happy to be wrong on that, but to my knowledge, so far, we have no method that allows us to take a sample of honey and say, okay, this is French honey. We don't have that. So we don't have the way to make sure that what we label is exactly what is in the jar. We can have some approximations. We can say, okay, it comes from that type of flowers, so it must be that region. And if you don't have those flowers in France, then you would say it's a fraud. But it's very regional, even local. It depends of what is the environment, the immediate environment of bees, what you find afterwards in honey. So yes, for traceability, but let's be realistic. So let's put in place something that we can check. Otherwise, you just add something on the label, and that's very easy. So if you want country of origin labeling, okay, let's go for country of origin labeling. In legislative terms, it's very easy. But in fact, as to the impact, it puts on the shoulders of good faith operators something that is stringent, something that may be, and our Spanish speaker has hinted to that, something that may change trade flows. So suddenly we don't have Chinese honey anymore in Spain. So, okay, that's an impact. And don't forget that we need to import 40% of our honey. So that's one element. So it changes trade flows to a certain extent. For those who are genuine operators, how do they ascertain the exact percentage of that or that origin on a blend of honey? So that would be for them a very big burden. They would have to find a way to put that in place because they want to be genuine. They want to be right when they put that percentage. But are we able technically to have production lines that allow to be so precise? Sorry for that. So there are many practical aspects, and we are looking into them. We are listening to everything that is available. To be very clear, we have not yet found a way that would increase all that would meet all expectations that we are hearing, while allowing genuine operators to label correctly their product. So again, as I said earlier on, fraud, if somebody wants to fraud, he or she will fraud. And it's only by going in the companies and being very tough in inspections, in sanctions, etc., that we can combat that. It's not because you have a label that you are ensuring the traceability, the good functioning of the supply chain. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Misson, for your reply. And I see that perhaps Mr. Juozas would like to take the floor on a follow-up comment.
Yes, thank you. The traceability issue is uncharted field in our sector too, but I can tell you that there are operators who already have in place traceability and even use, like in the case of Belgium, the major honey buyer and processor is using blockchain technology, and even very small beekeepers in France at a very regional level. So the way we need to look at the traceability within this sector is not food safety. That was the fact. Why do we have it in the beef meat sector? But we need to look at it as a tool to ensure the product integrity, authenticity, and perhaps also origin. And now, yeah, Mrs. Misson is right. We don't have a reliable analytical tool to prove that this is the French honey or Spanish honey if the environment is more or less the same. But there are new methods being developed. In Finland, we are currently working, our research team at a university, on a new method that would use radioactive elements present in the nature in very small quantities as markers. And I don't want to close the fact that analytical methods develop and they can come up with a solution to prove even the origin. But what we need, and that's what we were calling for some years now, and I must thank Joint Research Center to be with us from the European Commission on this. We need some reference bank of reference honeys, and beekeepers are ready to supply them because this is about the product authenticity again. So the traceability aspect, we should not be fixed in the past and look at it as a food safety issue purely. And I believe we will find workable solutions really, because what we are faced with, and this is the major problem, is we have honey flows from outside the EU. They enter the EU market, and then we don't trace them anymore. I'm sure if we have a workable traceability system, we would also improve our statistics about the honey market. And as Mrs. Misson knows from the Civil Dialogue Group, our honey and beekeeping statistics, all right, we can still improve them, I think. So there are multiple advantages, and the discussion will be technical, I agree. But I'm very confident that we will find a solution, and I would be happy that when we update the EU honey directive, we go into specific aspects of the directive. We don't rebuild the directive. We need to target specific things that will solve our market challenges and problems. And looking forward to it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Juozas. I see that Professor Garcia would also like to take the floor.
Thank you, Elias. Yes, indeed, the methods of adulteration or the methods to cheat the geographical origin of honey are every day more sophisticated. So in the current state of the art, there is no single method or no single strategy that can deal perfectly with all different kinds of adulteration in the honey market. So currently we have what we would say an holistic approach. That means that there are testing tools and non-testing tools. In the non-testing tools, you have traceability, you have auditing systems, and you do have also the study of economic anomalies, as I showed you. On the testing part, normally there is no single method that can detect all kinds of adulteration and all kinds of violation, but it's in the choice of the appropriate combination of methods that we do have a final reliable result. So, for example, in the case of geographical origin, the combination of some organoleptic testing plus pollen testing plus nuclear magnetic resonance gives us a good result. So that's why I also wanted to go a step behind labeling and say, let's put the sound basis in order to, when we change the labeling, we can really test if the geographic origin in the label is true. So I think sometimes, even for human health, we are using methods that are not 100% perfect. And we are quite happy if a test gives us a 95% approximation to reality. But it seems that for honey, we are expecting for a 100% reliable method. And that's not how it works. Normally, we need to make a good balance with the state of the art and a good approach. So I think in the end, with an holistic approach, we have good methods recently developed to meet good results.
Thank you very much for your input, Professor Garcia. And I think that this also serves to reply to a question received by the audience. But I will perhaps read this out loud because it specifically addresses the comments of Ms. Misone. So at the moment, there is no common guidelines on how to conduct lab tests. So will the Commission work also on the creation of common guidelines on how to conduct those EU tests to detect adulteration of honey?
That would be, as Stan just mentioned, work carried out with the JRC. So if we want to find something common, then we have to start from what is practiced for the moment and put all that together. So that's job for the JRC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Misone. Then also perhaps we've heard about the international dimension to the discussion as well. So for a sector under a lot of pressure currently, one might say even in crisis, we heard by Ms. Vrevch also that about the different angles of the discussion, that it's not only economic one, but it's also climate change impacted, given the effects of climate change, the recent extreme weather conditions, but also the summer fires in many member states. So I also wanted to ask our panelists, what do you think we could further do to prevent the vulnerability of the sector from potentially fraudulent low-quality imports? And also, maybe I can link this with a question that I see has just popped up in the Q&A's box on what type of penalty could be considered in case of fraud. Is there any speaker that would like to take the floor? This is once again an open question for all panelists.
Elias, I'm sorry. The first step is to update the standard. It's in the definition of the product that you have the legal base for eventual, for example, legal actions or whatever. So if you do have a standard which is not updated, mainly not in the definitions, because the definitions are absolutely perfect, I believe, but it's in the testing and the methods to prevent honey fraud. Once you have a good standard, an updated standard, then you can go to the next step. Regarding what you mentioned, to the complexity of testing, we are now working with many European experts in the development of decision guidance, because in the multiplicity of testing, you do have to have a guidance, what first and what follows. So there are current efforts to do this, and probably in the next year, this guidance will be published and will be available. Of course, there are different interpretations, different local needs, but always current efforts have to be used as a basis, at least for future work. Thank you, Elias.
Thank you very much, Professor Garcia. Perhaps any other comment from, yes, I see Mr. Guerreros.
Yeah, I would like to add that perhaps this has to be focused like the problem with the olive oil adulteration, that it has in the regulation, it has a decision tree, because it's very nice to hear Professor Garcia to say that we have an holistic approach and so, but at the end, when you have to say this product is correct or is not correct, not only for us to publish the results, but also for the authorities to say if this product can be sold or not. This holistic approach is difficult to arrive to a decision that can be sufficient enough, heavy enough, sure to go with this decision until the end with the penalty, for example. So a decision tree like it exists for olive oil, to say this is the first analysis, then we go for this. Perhaps also organoleptic test, why not, as in olive oil, to be very clear and everybody with the same steps to arrive to a conclusion that everybody is happy with or can accept.
Thank you very much, Mr. Guerreros. And perhaps just a final question. I'm very happy, as we need to really work in close collaboration. We need to work together to ensure that honey remains a natural quality product, as Ms. Vrevch also stressed. So turning to the Slovenian presidency then, I think Ms. Vrevch also warmly welcomed that countries of origin of honey blends will be indicated on the label of honey in the future. So I was wondering what specific changes would perhaps the Slovenian presidency foresee for clear, simple, and efficient information for consumers? And is there perhaps any update on the progress of negotiations in the Council?
Well, thank you. For this question, what I wanted, or what I stressed in my reply, it's clearly the Council has in very broadly supported the idea that the directive has to be opened and addressed, and that in particular in relation to honey blends, but clearly there are maybe not so clear common views on how to address this, and those views differ between member states. But anyway, I think that what was the common sense of the discussion And with the discussion we had, we wanted to contribute kind of the voice of the council in the public consultation. And I think that the commissioner has paid great attention or particular attention to what the member states have to say. That it's clear that then the technical details at the end, which the commission will present, will depend on the impact assessment, but also on I think on our future work. So what I can assure you is that Slovenia, even after the presidency, will try to keep the objective and build coalitions to have an ambitious solution on the table next year. So that's something which is evident, because you have to know, you have to be aware that very soon our presidency will come to an end.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vrevcha. I just also notice, I would also like to, of course, thank all the speakers for the reactions with regards to the Q&As and panel discussion. I just noticed that we're slightly running back in terms of time, so I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you for the interactive and lively discussion. So on this note, I think it would be of great interest to hear from MEP Mr. Frank Bogovic as well, who is with us today. Mr. Bogovic is a member of the European Parliament for the group of EPP, and under the umbrella of the Intergroup also holds the position of Bioeconomic Working Group Chair. So Mr. Bogovic, thank you very much for being with us today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Elias, and thanks to my distinguished guest, Juozas, Olekas, to organize this great event. I'm very happy that we organized this event during the Slovenian presidency, so that Simona Vrevc, my colleague when I was on Ministry of Agriculture, is also with us, and she presented the Slovenian position on bees, on honey, what is one very important topic for us, as she mentioned. Otherwise, when we speak about nature, we say that bees are the indicator of the health of the nature. We speak a lot about pollinators, and when we come to honey, we can again say that this honey is indicator of traceability, trust, and also in food chain, and also about frauds we spoke about. I will say a few sentences about climate changes. At home in Slovenia, I'm also apple producer, and apple producer, we are very connected with beekeepers. And I bring in my 3 hectares big orchards each year around 10 hives for pollination. And I'm lucky now my son has 24 beehives, so that we have family business this, and we cooperate in this topic. But unfortunately, last 5 years, we struggled 4 times because of the frost, and when we have problems in apple production, in the same problems and troubles are beekeepers. So I think we should also speak a lot about this, and this is for if I can say very practically, in my country, it's last year's a big, enormous problems, bigger than bee diseases, what we spoke a lot, and also respect of beekeepers from farmers and other relations. Now about labeling, we heard that a lot that it's not easy, that it's a question about analytic methods and also the intention of the consumers. And usually, if we ask for public opinion, I'm sure that, and usually from when we get from the Commission some new files, usually we start the public opinion on this topic is such and such. And I'm sure here, if we ask people, I don't know these figures, but I'm sure that 90% of people agree with this, that it's necessary to do something, that we will know at this essential food like honey is the origin of country, and what we eat when we have on our spoons the most healthy food, as we say usually. So I think that we should think about consumers and do something in this direction, because we know also in agriculture sector for agriculture food, we have many labeling, origin, local, organic. Last months, years, also we see faces of farmers in their campaigns. And I'm sure that that consumers don't know which is the part of this food, and sometimes it's much more than advertising. But if we put on the honey, I can say for sure in Slovenia, if people see not the European Union honey or outside of European Union, it's not enough and it's not fair to consumers. And if you put on the labeling at least this, that we will know countries, and if we can add also percentage of blending, like Simona said, I think that we will do a big step in the right direction. So don't forget on consumers. They will push, I think, also on those who will make fake honey, that they will not be long time on the market. So I think that we must go in this direction. And thanks again for organizing this event and to give me opportunity to this intervention. Thanks, Ilias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bogovic. And on behalf of the European Parliament Intergroup on Climate Change, Biodiversity and Sustainable Development, I would also like to thank hosting MEP, Mr. Olekas, for kindly organizing this event under the umbrella of the Intergroup. So on this note, I would like to provide the floor back to Mr. Olekas for his closing remarks, wrapping up today's event and a very fruitful discussion. So, Mr. Olekas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ilias. First of all, I would like to thank again all the presenters again for the very valuable input. And for me, it's very important that we should keep in mind that the consumers in the center of all this discussion, and labeling, traceability, maybe improving new technologies for testing. We should keep this all in mind. And prepare the updating of the directive, because just yesterday in the Agri Committee we talked about unfair trading practice, and while these are usually committed by the big retail companies, the problem we discussed today is also connected to lack of information in the honey labeling harms consumers, as well as puts European beekeepers into an unfortunate competition tentative position. Considering all that, I hope that the issue can be solved, and we hear from the Commission that the time is the 2022, and I hope our colleagues in the Commission and the Council will keep working on it and deliver us a good solution and proposal for the improving this directive. And we beekeepers, we politicians, and we consumers will be happy with this approval. Thank you once again, all of you, for participating in this our meeting.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.